So the archaeologists have been working at Coleshill for nearly 5 years now, and we've uncovered an incredible wealth of information from the archaeology. So in the main phase, we found a couple of different things. The key one was our gardens. So our gardens were nationally significant and the best preserved gardens of a medieval and post-medieval date ever found in the UK. So they're interesting for a couple of reasons. One of the main ones is their preservation. They were absolutely stunning. So better preserved than the ones at Hampton Court Palace and the ones at Kenilworth Castle. One of the other interesting things as well is they were actually bigger than the ones at Hampton Court Palace. It was only by about 10 metres, but it was still bigger than Hampton Court Palace, so that was quite a nice thing. We also found an additional square moat and a smaller square moat, which was in addition to the octagonal moat that we always knew was there. We were also lucky enough to find the beginnings of what turned out to be the gatehouse that we found in this latest phase. So in the latest phase of work, we found a real wealth of information. We found the gatehouse with its 2 massive towers and square building behind it. We found the mill and its associated mill pond. We found a medieval and then a later post-medieval bridge with the post-medieval sat on top of the medieval one. And then we also found under the grade listed barn building, we found the evidence of the stables that were built for the manor house and where all the horses were kept within it. So it's been a real development on this phase of the site. We weren't expecting too much. We knew we'd get the rest of, well, we'd hoped we'd get the rest of the gatehouse. We thought we might get some stables, and we knew we'd probably find the moat, but we weren't expecting the real wealth of information and all the phasing that we've managed to find out of it. So we're finished on site now, and we've brought quite a lot of material back. So we've brought environmental samples back to look at kind of the conditions that the area was like during certain periods in the history, so the medieval and the post-medieval periods. We also have brought back quite a lot of finds. So the ones in front of me have only just been found probably over the last few weeks. So I have a bit of information on them, but not too much at the moment. So although we finished in the field, we're now giving over to our incredible team back in the office who'll start analysing all these artefacts and the environmental samples. So that's one of the things that we don't talk about too much, is that we have all the field work that gets done, but then we have all this work that gets done post-field work to analyse everything that we have and really go through it and start really unravelling all the things that they can out of it. And that's been quite interesting. So from our main phase of works, we've had a whole wealth of information come out of that you would never have had any idea about when we were on site, and it's just our experts who are able to look at that. Having a look at some of the finds we've had from the last phase, this is kind of one of the first ones to pick up, one of the obvious ones. It's huge. So from what I understand, it's a bone from a horse, and probably a heavy variety, so maybe a Shire horse. And it's quite nice. And one of the things that we've seen through some of the other artefacts on site is they're quite selective actually about the animals they have, and we've seen that they're selecting better breeds. So we've seen it in some of the bones from the pigs, where they're almost they're doing selective breeding to get the best animals. And it's interesting just to see this variety that they have. So we've had the whole mix. So we've had kind of what you'd expect, kind of cattle, we've had pigs, we've had horse, but we've also had cats, dogs, we've had kind of fish bones. We've just had a whole plethora of animals, and it's been really interesting to have almost this slice through the history of the site where we've got a whole range of different animals living there for different purposes. So moving on, we've got this bone. So again, so this one's to be looked at soon, but I believe again this one's a cattle. But quite interestingly, it's got a slice through it, so they're butchering it. So the suspicion is this is probably for butchery, so eating meals in the evening. So they probably like their steak and probably liked different kind of joints from the cattle. So it's quite nice that we're seeing what they're eating. And we've even seen that they're eating quite a lot of deer on site. And we know there was a deer park, so they were hunting them and they almost had a free resource of them. So then moving on, you've got this item, and this is quite a nice one that links into that. So this is a fork, I believe, and it has a deer antler on the end. And then kind of on the end, you can just about see where it's kind of rusted through, where we've got the kind of 2 bits that would have stuck out for the fork. And I think just looking at it now, this is the first time I've really held it since we've brought it back, and it's incredibly awkward to kind of try and use. So I'm not entirely sure how they would have used it to eat, but it feels quite awkward in your hand. But it's quite interesting nonetheless. So we have that one. And then moving over to the finds on this side, and this kind of vase that we have hasn't been off for analysis yet, so I can't say exactly what it is. But it's really nice, and it's one of our first kind of finds that's almost fully complete from a pottery perspective. And it's just really nicely designed, and there's kind of feels like there's a lot of thought gone into it in the design. And I'm quite looking forward to seeing what the report says to it, because one of the things that we've seen across Coleshill is actually it looks like there's almost pottery production going on in Coleshill. We don't quite know where it is. We haven't found it. But it looks like there's pottery that's almost unique to Coleshill, and I'm not sure if this is one of them. But it does look a bit off. It almost looks like it could potentially be wasted because there's kind of sort of dents in it. It's a bit warped. And that was one of the things we were seeing. There does seem to be a lot of wasted jugs and wasted material, suggesting there is something going on with pottery production in the area. So this has been a really nice one. Now, next one we'll have a look at, and I always feel a bit nervous picking this one up. So this is a silver or pewter spoon that we found. So I believe this is 14th century or thereabouts. And it's really nice because just on the end of it, looks like an acorn on the end. And because of the date we're looking at, we're potentially even talking about Simon de Montfort may well have picked up this spoon and was eating with it. And it's, you know, really interesting that we're talking about these people in history and we're looking at the artifacts they could well have held. And that's been one of the nice connections. You don't normally have that. You don't really know who was there. You might be able to tie it to a historical event, but you can't tie it to the exact person. So, you know, although it might not have been held by Simon de Montfort, he could well have seen it and he could have held it. And it's just that nice idea that maybe, you know, we have got that direct connection that we wouldn't normally have. And then the last two that we'll have a look at are these two here. So these are two of our lead shots that we have. So in my left hand, we have one that hasn't been fired. So this one, in essence, it's still spherical, it's still pretty solid. It doesn't look like it has any impact marks. Whereas the other one in my hand, this one does indeed look like it's been impacted and has a flat surface. So when it's been fired, it's come in, smacked into something and then dropped down. So this is really interesting because this helps back up the idea again that the gatehouse has been fired at and it's left the impact marks on it itself. So one of the most exciting things now is being able to talk about the legacy of the project and what we can give to you and what we've done on site and how that can feed back to everyone, because it's your history, it's the history of everyone that this site has given us. And we did a couple of things on site so we could present it to you. So one of the things we did is we laser scanned the gatehouse, and by laser scanning the gatehouse it gave us this fantastic record for the archives, but also meant we could then start creating 3D models and 3D reconstructions of it. So our team have been busy behind the scenes creating these models. And that means you can look at them digitally, and we can also then create the 3D models so you can physically touch them and see how they would have been. We've also been lucky enough to have some of our finds scanned as well. So we've been able to, again, look at them digitally and bring them to you. But we can also create them as a 3D model that you can touch and you can feel and you can see working in real life. So we had one of our wax seals reprinted, and well, not reprinted, it was printed. So we could then use it in wax to look at how it worked and how it formed. And then when we come to community events, we can then have you come and touch it and use it and see how it would have worked. And that's been the really exciting thing about this project, being able to do all these things. So YouTube videos, the 3D models, to bring the history to you and the archaeology to you so you can be involved as well.